Metrics can be defined as a tool that tells us whether we need to make changes or maintain doing what we're doing well. These are metrics that the Scrum team can use to determine how effective they are as a group. Scrum metrics are effective tools for planning, inspecting, and responding to change. Metrics aid in identifying reality checks so that you can learn about their track record and inspect and adapt from them. As a result, concentrating on the wrong KPIs can cause the team to lose focus on the Scrum or make them less productive. So, for you to avoid committing this fault, we've compiled a list of important Scrum Master metrics. Of course, there is nothing as a one-size-fits-all solution. Instead, you could select the most useful metrics for you and your team. So, today we'll talk about some useful Scrum metrics. Hello everyone. This is George from Invensis Learning. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for regular updates. Now we shall look into the agenda. First, we shall see what is Scrum. Then, we shall discuss what are Scrum metrics. Then, we shall discuss the top Scrum metrics for effective project delivery, which are Team Velocity, Sprint Burndown, Sprint Retrospective, Customer Satisfaction, Capital Redeployment, Return to Investment, Communication, Defect Leakage. Then, we shall know. Why do you need Scrum metrics? In the end, we shall talk regarding Scrum Metrics and KPI. Sounds interesting, right? So, let us start the session without much delay. Now, we shall understand. What is Scrum? Scrum refers to Project Agile management methodology. It structures and estimates work using the concept of time scoping. Scrum is a project management framework that makes it easier for people to work together. Like a rugby squad, Scrum encourages teams to learn from their mistakes, self-organize while working on an issue, and reflect on their wins and defeats to improve. A Scrum team works in sprints, lasting anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. The scope of work is determined by how much the team believes it can accomplish in a single sprint. The work delivered in each sprint should be ready to be given to clients. While software development teams most commonly utilize the Scrum I'm referring to, the concepts and lessons it teaches may be applied to any teamwork. One of the reasons Scrum is so popular is because of this. Scrum combines meetings, tools, and roles that work together to help teams structure and manage their work. As a result, it's sometimes referred to as an Agile project management framework. Now that you are aware of the Scrum, we shall discuss. What are Scrum metrics? Scrum metrics are key performance indicators, KPIs, that focus on delivering usable software. Scrum teams track and use these precise data points to increase efficiency and effectiveness. Scrum metrics can become insights that assist, guide, and improve a team's Agile journey when established, understood, and used. Scrum teams usually use metrics to inform decision-making and improve planning and execution efficiency. They can also establish a baseline for the current state of affairs and set target goals and improvement strategies. Unfortunately, there is no industry standard benchmark against which everyone can measure. This is because comparing data points without context is akin to comparing apples and oysters. In addition, every team is different in size, the technology used, type of work done, etc. Each team is responsible for deciding on metrics to track and how to use them. This is neither an individual effort nor something that the team's leadership or management can define and enforce on their behalf. Consider the accountabilities outlined in the 2020 Scrum Guide to understand better what Scrum metrics cover at a deeper level. To incrementally add value in each sprint. To implement Scrum, as specified in the Scrum Guide. To be held responsible for its efficacy. Let us now move to our next topic, that is, why do you need Scrum metrics? Scrum metrics are useful for identifying, analyzing, and interpreting data points obtained from Scrum indicators and evaluating project delivery performance. For example, you may use Scrum metrics to set a baseline for project team progress and track their work process data to evaluate if they're doing well and delivering positive outcomes. Tracking Scrum metrics for the entire project development cycle will help you find areas for improvement, allowing you to deliver a successful project to the client. You can create your Scrum metrics to track project delivery depending on your work methodology and client requirements. Scrum teams use metrics to inform decision-making and improve planning and execution efficiency. They can also establish a baseline for the current state of affairs and set target goals and improvement strategies. Unfortunately, there is no industry standard benchmark against which everyone can measure. This is because comparing data points without context is akin to comparing apples and oysters. Every team is different in size, the technology used, type of work done, etc. Each team is responsible for deciding on metrics to track and how to use them. This is neither an individual effort nor something that the team's leadership or management can define and enforce on their behalf. Scrum metrics can assist teams in establishing benchmarks and guiding the work's direction. As a result, Scrum metrics are beneficial to both established and new teams. Tracking Scrum metrics helps bring visibility to other aspects of a team's effectiveness, such as velocity, capacity, delivery predictability, and product quality. Key metrics can cultivate team performance awareness and instigate action to change and improve. They can also be utilized for tracking the pleasure and contentment of a team over time. To know more about Scrum metrics, you guys can take up Scrum courses offered by Invensis Learning. To know more about this, check out the description below. If you guys have any queries, drop them in the comment section. Thank you. Top Scrum metrics for effective project delivery. For many Agile teams, it's all too tempting to rely on gut feelings or intuition to gauge a team's performance. While there may be various practical reasons for this tendency, it is still a significant squandered opportunity. There are a variety of metrics that may be used to track these objectives, but keep in mind that they aren't a one-size-fits-all solution for every project and team. Instead, look at KPIs and measurements related to a team's method of operation, business goals, and customer results. First, in the list, we have team velocity. In Scrum, velocity refers to the team's expected completion rate and closing story points. It's useful for organizing future sprints and determining the team's productivity. Team members can predict how long the project will take if they know the velocity. Product owners may also find predicting the average story points completed by looking back on previous sprints. This will provide them with an estimate of how many story points they may expect in the current sprint. Velocity is a metric that measures how many user stories the team completed on average in previous sprints. It helps predict how much work the team will complete in future sprints. While velocity is an important statistic to monitor in any Agile project, experts advise against using it as a goal or against comparing teams. Velocity is a subjective metric representing the team's progress, depending on each team's definition of story points. Attempting to boost velocity artificially can destroy confidence and limit openness between teams and management. It's one of Scrum's most important metrics. This is the quantity of work completed by a team during a sprint. Velocity is a simple yet effective way for determining how quickly Agile development teams regularly provide business value. It measures how much product backlog a Scrum team turns into a product increment during a sprint, as tracked by the development team for usage inside the Scrum team. Add up the estimations of the features, user stories, requirements, or backlog items successfully delivered in an iteration to evaluate your Agile team's velocity. It is recommended that the team estimating the amount of scope which can be supplied by a certain date. Predicting a delivery date for a specific amount of scope. While defining the amount of scope we will commit to a sprint, we must first understand our limitations. Measuring unit equals story points. The amount of time a team can devote to a sprint is mostly determined by its velocity, how much work it can complete in a given amount of time, and its capacity or how much time it has available. A velocity chart shows how much value was provided during a sprint. This allows us to estimate a team's work in future sprints. A team's velocity can only be determined after completing a few sprints together. As a result of a team's collaboration, velocity will eventually stabilize. To understand more about this, we shall consider an example. First, consider a sprint and completed story points. Story points are used as a unit of measurement for estimating the total effort required to completely implement a product backlog item or any other piece of work. The table shown represents the sprints with their respective completed story points. So, to measure velocity, we have to sum all the sprint values and divide them by the number of sprints. We get 157.6, which is 26 story points. Next in the list we have sprint burndown chart. This is most likely the most popular Scrum metric. It displays how many hours or story points are left to finish the stories scheduled for each day of the sprint. By the end of the sprint, the goal is to have completed all planned work. When it comes to the Scrum Master, this is one of the most useful KPIs. Sprint burndown is a visual representation of each sprint's progress. A Scrum metric measures how much work your team get done in a sprint timeframe. This metric can be calculated using a line graph with the x-axis representing sprint period time and the y-axis representing the amount of work left to complete the project. This graph depicts a pattern in how well your project team completes work to meet deadlines. It discusses the team's progress to make it simple. It also lets you see if the team is working according to plan or on track to reach their sprint objective within the timeframe. This is regarded as one of the success metrics because it provides. The time is represented. Hours or tail points are the units of measurement. At the start of a sprint, the team forecasts the workload. The goal is to finish the burden before the sprint ends. To better comprehend a team's progress, a sprint burn-down chart should be used to provide a rapid review of the sprint. It aids in predicting a team's ability to finish work within a set time frame and tracking scope creep. A sharp decline in a burn-down chart may be due to an incorrect work estimate. The standard representation of progress within a sprint is the sprint burn-down chart. The sprint burn-down displays whether the team is on track to complete the sprint scope or not at a glance. It provides some useful insights into how the team works due to its simplicity. For example, if you observe that your team finishes work early frequently, it's possible that you did too little work during sprint planning. On the other hand, if your staff fails to meet their projection, it could indicate that you have taken on too much work. Burn-down charts are useful because they provide a lot of information in a short amount of time. Looking at them gives you a clear sense of how things have gone. You can easily track and compare data and adjust your work method to reach satisfactory outcomes if necessary. Now let us look into the sprint burn-down chart itself. As already mentioned earlier, the x-axis mentions the number of days in a sprint, so let us consider for a week, and thus we have 7 plots, and each of them is plotted individually. The y-axis is work, which is usually represented as story points. The line joining the total work and total time represents the outstanding efforts. This is present as a default line on every chart. Another line is plotted when the project gets started. Finally, the amount of work left or done is plotted and joined together. But, if you can notice, the ideal and the actual lie don't match because of the complexities present in the task. If there exists much more work to be done than anticipated, it is time to buckle down and put in more effort. On the other hand, if there is less work left than expected, you will most likely complete the task sooner than expected. This is because you would have overestimated the required effort and should do a more accurate estimation. The next metric is Sprint Retrospective. The retrospective is an important aspect of Scrum, and it focuses on improving software processes. A retrospective meeting allows the Scrum team to reflect on prior sprints and determine how to improve productivity in the coming sprint. It usually occurs after a sprint or any other development cycle and before the next sprint planning. The retrospective's goal is to identify improvements that need to be made for the process to be more effective. In addition, it provides valuable insight into the team's difficulties and aids in the development of an improvement action plan. With this, you can see what issues your team faces and use that information to improve your work every day and allow you to identify any project flaws. You'll be able to spot faults that don't match quality standards and promptly resolve the most pressing ones. Sprint retrospectives may help even the most successful teams. This is when you and your team reflect on the sprint and celebrate what went well, what is required to be improved, and why. This is, of course, the ideal time and place to analyze critical sprint indicators like sprint objective accomplishment and sprint satisfaction. In addition, the Scrum team's capacity to alter its development methodology for the following sprint makes it more effective and pleasant. The count of retrospective items identified, the team's retrospective items to address, and the issues resolved by the conclusion of the sprint can all be used to determine this. Scrum experts can use the retrospective metric to discuss project success in the past and future directions. Then, to optimize project technology and maximize efficiency, you can concentrate on software process improvement. A retrospective meeting is held near the conclusion of a production cycle to review historical issues that the team can address in the following sprint. On average, a retrospective meeting can take place for about 3 hours or even less than that. During this meeting, the Scrum team can use sticky notes. They will point out the good things implemented in those points to have clear improvements. By seeing this, one can check out those points that must be improved. These discussions help the team in improving. Once the retrospective ends, the team agrees on improving ways in the next sprint. Next in the list, we have Customer Satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is a metric that may be used to assess the quality of your projects. Possibly, it is the most truthful and insightful metric. First, determine whether or not your clients are satisfied. Iterative development is about getting clients' input to see if the increment meets their needs. Every firm and team should be aware. Isn't that so? This indicator aids us in determining whether the services and goods we provide to our customers are up to par. So said, it's a technique to figure out where we stand. Regular check-ins with clients to verify that they approve of our work are critical for our team. Customers' testimonials, feedback, review meetings, and surveys are examples of such check-ins. Based on the impact of the customer survey, the Scrum team can either keep doing what they're doing or make changes as needed. In addition, surveys and reviews with rating scales can gauge client satisfaction. Rating scales allow you to collect data points to determine the strengths and shortcomings of your products or services. Customer satisfaction metrics might also include sales data, help calls, or just the use of a product or website. It is measured using a variety of well-known indicators. For example, the Scrum team may determine whether it is reaching its end goal, offering value to customers, by using a consistent customer satisfaction metric and measuring it for each release. It's simple to figure out using Google Forms, feedback sessions, reviews, or random surveys. Then, we can either continue on our current route or make adjustments based on the outcomes. Alternatively, you can use any established terms, such as Net Promoter Score, NPS, to determine how likely customers are to suggest your product or service to others. A range of numbers could represent NPS. Customer loyalty is a critical aspect in determining a company's success. For this, you can use the Net Promoter Score as a tool. This statistic is used to determine whether or not our consumers are satisfied with the products, services, or experiences we provide. In other words, it's a technique of determining whether our work meets or surpasses their expectations. Next, we have capital redeployment. Capital redeployment is the process of moving funds from one project to another. In other words, when the expense of future development exceeds the value of future development. It's time to call it a day on the project. In that event, the crew will be reassigned to a new project. Capital redeployment determines whether it is worthwhile to continue a Scrum project or if the project's economic value now outweighs its costs. The crew should be redeployed to other, more profitable projects in this situation. In that event, the crew will be reassigned to a new project. Capital redeployment enables a company to focus its resources on high-value product development while increasing its overall investment return. Calculate the revenue value, V, of the remaining items in the project backlog, the actual cost, AC, of the sprints required to complete those items, and the opportunity cost, OC, of alternative product work the team may execute to compute capital redeployment. When VAC plus OC is reached, the project should be completed and the team reassigned to other tasks. While most of the metrics mentioned aim to evaluate software quality and team productivity at various stages and from various viewpoints, keeping an eye on your team's well-being is crucial. Then, return on investment. Scrum has the potential to deliver ROI more quickly than any other strategy. Software companies can use ROI to track particular projects and the company's overall progress. Not only that, but it also plays a key role in defining the project's long-term value. The total revenue from a product versus the cost of the sprints required to develop it is calculated as a Scrum project's return on investment, ROI. The revenue is calculated by deducting the total cost of the sprints invested in that product. Because working software can be given to consumers very early on in Scrum, it has the potential to achieve ROI far faster than traditional development approaches. In addition, Scrum teams add new features with each sprint, leading to increased revenue. The return on investment, ROI, metric measures how profitable a company's investment is. Calculating the return on investment, ROI, allows you to prioritize projects that generate the most profit. You can use ROI to compare potential profit margins to an initial expenditure and ensure that your efforts focus on projects that generate income. The return on investment, ROI, difference between the benefits received and the costs incurred. Managers should examine the ROI for every decision and collaborate with customers to ensure everyone agrees on solutions that optimize the ROI. Next, we have communication. One of the most critical parts of Scrum is clear communication. It is critical to the effective completion of practically any endeavor. Good communication keeps project stakeholders informed, and Scrum teams focused on finishing the sprint's committed work. Conversely, your Scrum team will invariably come apart due to a lack of or poor communication. Therefore, for efficient cooperation and co-creation of value, the Scrum team must have open lines of communication. Face-to-face meetings are the lifeblood of Agile projects. They make it possible for customers and development teams to collaborate more closely and be on the same page. When it comes to increasing efficiency, metrics or KPIs aren't enough, team members must be upfront with their customers. In Agile, only open and regular communication leads to improved team performance and, as a result, a better final product. In addition to hosting meetings, it's critical to keep the project management software board up to date. This is a simple way for everyone to see the project's current state at a glance. Active sprints show you what hasn't been begun yet, what is in process, and what has already been completed. Many dashboards for project management may also assist you in day-to-day project management by concentrating on key areas for effective communication. They include a series of dashboard gadgets that can help the team review its performance and quickly identify problems, challenges, and roadblocks. Last, in the list, we have defect leakage. This statistic can reveal patterns in job tasks that could lead to inaccuracies in project outcomes. Defect tracking can also help you figure out how to avoid problems in the first place and how to solve them. Understanding the flaws in your project can aid in the refinement of your production procedures, thus minimizing future defects. Product faults that made it through the project development process before the team solved the problem are escaped defects. Client satisfaction can be improved by delivering a product free of defects such as bugs or damaged parts. Monitoring escaped defect rates can also assist you in identifying potential causes of errors, which can help you prevent them. The total number of flaws captured in a stage to the sum of the total number of defects captured in that stage and the total number of defects assigned to a stage but only captured in later stages. This score shows the quality of the testing. Defect count equals measuring unit. The number of bugs that have escaped into production is a critical indicator of how many users have seen. Therefore, in theory, a Scrum team should thoroughly test stories and avoid escaping faults. Although this rarely occurs in practice, escaping defects is a reliable indicator of product quality. It's also worth keeping an eye on defect density, which assesses the number of faults per unit of software size, such as lines of code. While this statistic is often biased, it is useful in fast-paced projects to see if defect increase is normal given the underlying codebase's growth. Now that you have understood the 8 Scrum metrics parameters, we shall now see Scrum Metrics and KPI. Scrum metrics and KPIs belong to a larger category of Agile KPIs. Lean measurements, which focus on the flow of value from a company to its customers, and Kanban metrics, which focus on workflow and getting things done, are 2 examples of Agile metrics. While most Agile metrics apply to Scrum teams, Scrum-specific metrics concentrate on predictable software delivery, ensuring that Scrum teams offer maximum value to clients with each iteration. The 3 main purposes of Scrum KPIs are to assess the Scrum team's deliverables and determine how much value is being given to consumers. To assess the Scrum team's effectiveness and value to the business in terms of ROI, time to market, and other factors. To assess the health of the Scrum team and identify issues such as team turnover, attrition, and disgruntled developers. Scrum is designed to help teams work better together, and Scrum metrics are designed to assist teams in determining that Scrum is working for them. When using Scrum metrics, a team should feel encouraged rather than burdened. It's not necessary to track all of the metrics mentioned in this article. You can start with 1 or 2 and see if they assist your team in developing. On the other hand, your Scrum team may have a well-established Scrum practice, and Scrum metrics aren't necessary. This is a fantastic location. Just remember the beneficial behaviors you developed as a result of these measures. Return to them regularly to keep your Scrum in good shape. To know more about Scrum metrics, you guys can take up Scrum courses offered by Invensis Learning. To know more about this, check out the description below. If you guys have any queries, drop them in the comment section. Thank you.